Dudes and dudettes, how are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to What's the Damage, the good old WTD question mark here on my channel. Today's video is going to be one of the most serious topics I have ever covered on this channel, and despite that, I'm still going to include my damage intro and background music, and the outro screen because of, well, continuity, right? But make no mistake, this is not a lighthearted video. It's not anything comedic at all, It's a very serious and ongoing topic right now, and it's something that I don't believe I've ever addressed before in any videos, so I decided to dedicate an entire, one here just talking about this, I'm going to be covering the Black Lives Matter movement, or abbreviated as BLM, which is this global movement that started back in 2013 after a rash, a few rash occurrences of police brutality against black people, African Americans in general, suffer a lot of discrimination every single day, but mostly in the United States, because as we know, it's a country that hundreds of years in the past used to enslave black people because they thought that they were inferior to whites, so they were essentially treated like animals, like pets that you could have at home to do your bidding. And despite there having been so many advancements, in humanity, as in, despite racism having reduced drastically over the years, it is still very prominent, When I say that it reduced drastically, it's not like a huge quantum leap, it still exists today, There is such a thing as white supremacy, and a lot of the people who supported Donald Trump a few years ago were white supremacists, So basically it's somebody who thinks that white people are the dominant figures in the world and everybody else, especially black people, are inferior. And BLM tries to, turn this on its head, similar to, feminism and Asian Lives Matter, but that's going to be a different topic for a different video. So essentially, it is a decentralized political and social movement that seeks to highlight racism, discrimination, and racial inequality, racial inequality that is experienced by black people on a daily basis, which does happen a lot more than you might think. If you live in America, you might have seen racism happening before your eyes and just not noticed it, And now when the supporters come together, they primarily protest incidents of police brutality and racially motivated violence towards African Americans, and there were a few instances that I'm going to highlight here a little bit later, of actual police brutalities that led to the deaths of black people, that if you stop to analyze were completely unjustified, They died completely just for no reason at all. Their deaths were just so horrific and useless, because they were just innocently minding their own business and the police decided that it was time for them to die. That's essentially how it works, And the movement and all organizations related to it, they typically advocate for various policy changes, and they're considered to be black liberation, which I think is justified. And there are specific organizations that label themselves as Black Lives Matter, like the Global Network with the same name, But you can pretty much protest against it wherever you are. You don't have to actually belong to an organization about it, And the overall movement is pretty much a network of people and organizations with no formal hierarchy. I think that's how you pronounce that word, I'm sorry. And the term itself, Black Lives Matter, is untrademarked, so you can use it freely. I can use it here in this video, for the title and talk about, it's all right. And even though the movement is characterized as being violent, the vast majority of the public demonstrations have been peaceful, A lot of people have taken to the streets to protest, One of my one of the YouTubers that I admire from the Smosh channel, Keith Leak Jr., he also did go to protest because he is black himself, and his friends, other castmates from Smosh also protested, which I thought was really cool. I saw a lot of YouTubers like Anthony Padilla, openly protesting it for several days or weeks on Twitter, It really became a big thing, guys. I myself talked about it on Twitter, I put up the hashtags, gave my opinions about it, And that's what you do, because on social media, you don't get any justice, but you do garner attention that might just spread and create this domino effect where other people will flock to your cause and also protest the same thing, That's what Twitter mostly is for, in my opinion. And racism still exists in the world, but in America, I lived there for many years of my life, and I was a stupid kid. I was very blind, and I only wanted to just, come home from school and play video games and hang out with my friends all day. I didn't really take the world very seriously. I never saw many instances of racism, but maybe it's because I just never noticed, or maybe I didn't recognize them as that. I didn't really have too much of an idea of what racism was, you know, but I know that during that time, you know, it was very, very rampant. Maybe not in my community because I lived in like a small town in the interior of Florida, so maybe I didn't really see too much of that. But there were a few killings in Florida some years ago, you know, involving police brutality against blacks, which I'm gonna get to in a little bit. And that's essentially what it is, you know. This movement here, you know, with a lot of different kinds of protests, you know, like for example, dying over rail tracks, where people they lay down over train tracks, you know. It's just a lot. There are a lot of ways that you can protest and peacefully. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people who took advantage of it to just loot, you know, and commit crimes and violence for just the sake of it, you know. Not everybody took it seriously and did what was supposed to be done. But anyway, it happened, you know, in 2013 on social media after the shooting of this African-American teenager, you know, and he was just 17, and that really sparked like an outcry in the community, and that's where this whole thing began. But it's not that violence against black people started in 2013. It had been ongoing for many years, but it seems like in the 2010s it just got worse. It's like mass shootings, you know. I talked about that in my video about gun control, you know. It just seems like it's getting worse and worse, you know. More black people are dying every day, every year, for no reason other than the white police think that they can kill them, you know. It makes no sense at all. But I'm gonna talk about a few specific instances now. Now, I've separated for you guys here 9 different instances of very violent police brutality that unfortunately led to the deaths of, you know, the victims involved. And it started way back in 2012 with Trayvon Martin, who was just 17. He was the neighborhood watch coordinator for his gated community, and he was just visiting relatives when he was shot and killed, man. 17-year-old kid serving his community, contributing to society, shot and killed by police officers, you know. And that was in Florida, by the way, where I grew up, so it just hits a lot closer to home. And then there was Ricky Boyd, who was 22. This one happened in Illinois, and she was shot by an off-duty cop. The guy wasn't even working, and he still shot and killed her. You let me know if you can find the sense in that. 2 years later in 2014, Michael Brown, who was 18, and he was just hanging out with his 22-year-old friend, and he was shot and killed. Also, his friend, I don't know, but this was in Missouri, you know. So as you guys can see, it sweeps across different states in the US, you know. It happens literally all over the country. Yet another very young guy. In the same year in New York, one of the most famous cases, which was Eric Gardner. I don't know how old he was, but he was considerably older. Now, this one here is one of the most infamous cases because it's one of the instances where we heard the now famous "I can't breathe" phrase, you know. And he was actually, apparently the cops were accusing him of, I think, selling cigarettes or something of the sort, you know. And he protested. He said that it wasn't him. And then they mobbed him, ganged up on him, and one of them started to choke him out, you know. And he said that "I can't breathe" 11 times before he died from it. 11 times he said, "I can't breathe." I mean, if you say it once, it should already be enough, you know, but they still killed him mercilessly, you know. And then in 2019, there was Javier Ambler II. This was in Texas, and he was actually tased, you know, but he was tased multiple times before he was killed, and he actually was not resisting. He actually had this congestive heart disease, you know, that actually made his heart, I don't really know how it works, but essentially, if you panic too much, it's actually going to make your heart fail, you know. Congestive heart failure is one of the reasons why he died, and he was pleading with them to stop, you know. He was saying, "Please save me," you know, like, "Take me to a hospital." He was pleading for his life and saying that he couldn't breathe, and they still killed him anyway. Okay. In the same year, also in Texas, a woman named Pamela Turner, she actually, I don't really know what the context was. I think the cop was trying to arrest her, possibly for, you know, a false accusation. Unfortunately, you know, she tried to use a taser on him. And of course, you know, cops will shoot African Americans for no reason at all. So if you give them a reason, that's just a guaranteed way to go. And he fatally shot and killed her as well. Okay, now in the same year in Colorado, a few months later, Elijah McClain, who was just 23, was also killed after a violent police exchange. And the thing with Elijah is that with him specifically, he was also one of the people who said that, you know, "I can't breathe," you know, and he was just a massage therapist, just trying to make a living, you know, trying to make his way in the world. And unfortunately, he was also shot and killed by a white cop. And then we're close to the most infamous case now. In 2020 in March, in 20, I said that Elijah was in Colorado, right? Well, the next one was in Washington, the freaking capital of the US of all places. On the beginning of March, Manuel Ellis, who was 33, Manuel Ellis, sorry, who was 33, was also shot and killed by a police officer. Also said that he couldn't breathe when it happened, you know, and he was still killed anyway. So it's kind of weird. He was 33. I think I mentioned his age. It's kind of weird when this kind of thing happens so close to home, right? The capital, man, you know? I'm pretty sure it was the capital, or maybe it was Washington State, because there are two Washingtons. One is the capital, but it's like on the other side of the country, and the other one is, I think, on close to New York, you know, on that coast there. And in 2020, we get to the most infamous case of all, and I think the most recent, which was, of course, George Floyd, you know, who was 46, and he was attempting to pay for something in a convenience store with a counterfeit bill. Whether or not he knew it was counterfeit, I don't know. But he was accosted by two cops, one of which was I forgot that bastard's name, something McKellen. Let me just look it up real quick, okay, guys? I have the cheat sheet here, okay? I'm just gonna Derek Chauvin, you know, he was the cop who actually handcuffed George and put him on the ground. And, you know, put his knee on his neck for 9 minutes, even as George was crying and pleading, saying that he couldn't breathe, you know, which again echoes all of these other instances that I mentioned, like, for example, Eric, you know, back in New York. So for 9 minutes, he had him in this chokehold with his knee. And even after he lost consciousness and stopped breathing, he still kept his knee there. The other officer was there, but he didn't help at all. He actually kept people away, even as they were recording and begging him to get off of his neck, you know. And this is what really set the internet and the world ablaze, because this was just intentional. This one was you could see the video on YouTube of the cop literally just there, like chilling, you know, not feeling any emotion at all, as his knee was on the guy's neck, you know, for no reason. So this was a very, very direct case of police brutality directed towards blacks. This was white supremacy and discrimination at its worst, you know. And the phrase "I can't breathe" has actually been reported in a 2020 study by the New York Times to have been said by 70 people or more, you know, more or less 70 people, over 70 people who were in police custody, you know, who said this phrase and were eventually killed by police, you know. So this is horrible. This is a horrific figure, man, you know, and I'm trying to give you guys direct information here from the source. I made a little cheat sheet here, but there are so many others, man. Go back a few decades and you will find hundreds of cases of police brutality directed towards black people, many of which succumbed to the police. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that the George Floyd murder happened in Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis, you know, forgot to say the place there. Now, the one good thing about this whole thing is that non-black people are starting to take it seriously, and this whole hashtag Black Lives Matter thing really put into perspective just how much discrimination there is, specifically in America, you know. Americans are very openly racist, man, you know, not all of them, but because the vast majority of the population is white, you know, I think that it makes them feel like they are superior, you know, and especially immigrants who come from different countries and they eventually get American citizenship, you know, and they think that all of a sudden they actually are American, you know. Some of them barely speak English, for crying out loud, but just because a piece of paper says that they're an American citizen, they think they can go ahead and spit on other people, you know. But you know what, honestly, that might be a topic for another video down the line. I'm not going to get into that right now, because that's a whole other can of worms that gets me pissed off, you know. But essentially, if you're white, you have this thing called white privilege that honestly you might not even realize that you have until you see something happening to a black person, you know. We've seen you know, excerpts. There was this one video that haunts me to this day, you know, forgot the context, but there was I think like a blitz or something, police doing random checks on cars driving by the street. Maybe it was during a ride or something. A car drove by with two white people driving it, nothing happened to them, but then the next car had two black people in it, and the police freaking broke the car. They started hitting it with their batons and smashed the glass and pulled them out, you know, and like tackled them to the ground and arrested them. It's like, it makes no sense, man, you know, like you see during the loots and the rioting back when these protests were happening, white people invading the stores and taking stuff, and the police didn't care, just let them off with a little slap on the ear. But if a black person tried to, they would be shot on the spot, man, you know. And You know, now the popularity of this movement has shifted over time, but people do still take it seriously today. You know, public opinion was actually negative in 2018, but it started to grow increasingly through 2019 and 2020. You know, when the COVID happened, it was still a thing. And a poll found that 67% of adult Americans expressed support for the BLM movement, you know. And a later poll in 2020 showed that support among American adults had actually dropped to 55%. But of course, notable declines being, you know, white people and Hispanics, you know, and support, of course, you know, remained through black adults, you know. Obviously, black people support this a lot more, but it's nice when somebody who's not black does support it, you know, because it's like when a man supports feminism, it shows that you really are advocating for change and you recognize that there's something wrong with society, you know, in that aspect. And also, the level of support remained steady up until 2021 last year, and as of May of this year, support for Black Lives Matter among all racial demographics has decreased significantly, you know, even among African Americans. But I think it's because it's not that the focus has shifted, but it's sort of temporarily, you know, moved over to Asians, you know, because then there was the whole Asian Lives Matter thing, you know, which is a whole nother topic that I will address in a future video pretty soon, you know. But Black Lives Matter, I have a lot of black friends. I even have black relatives, you know, and like I have never heard a story from them specifically about discrimination, you know, but I know that it exists, man, you know. If I pull up a conversation with any of my black friends living in America right now, I'm sure that I can get an excerpt or two talking about racism that they have experienced, you know. Maybe in the future I'll even make a video, you know, with their own testimonies, you know. I was actually considering doing this for this one, but it's a little ahead. I'm a little behind schedule and it would have taken way too long. But basically, the Black Lives Movement Matter is here to stay. The Black Lives Matter movement is here to stay, you know. I actually think it's a really good way for you to exercise your beliefs that black people, they are the same as everybody else. And if you stop to think about it, black people are actually very dominant in history, man, you know, because one of the most powerful people in the civil rights movement was Dr. Luther King, and then later Malcolm X, you know, who fought a lot for this, you know. One of the best fighters in history was Muhammad Ali. Well, then again, no, I don't know if he was. No, he was African American. He was black, you know. Many years later, we had Anderson Silva, the best UFC fighter in the world, you know. For a brief moment, for 8 years, the most powerful man in the world was black, Barack Obama, President of the United States. Let's go into sports, shall we? The best association football or soccer player ever was Pele, who was Brazilian, who was very black and played in a time where racial discrimination was very rampant, you know. The greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan, was black. And also the greatest winner who recently passed away, Bill Russell, was also black, you know. Basketball is predominantly dominated by, you know, black athletes, you know. For a time, one of the best artists in the world was Michael Jackson, who was black. He died white, but because of his skin condition, vitiligo, but he was black, you know. He was black on the inside, how they say, you know. A lot of records in the music industry, you know, very successful, you know, with the Jackson 5 and solo. And I could give a few more examples, you know. Let's, what else can I say? I had a few examples in my mind, but they just completely slipped me. The best golfer in the world, Tiger Woods, he's also black, you know. Right now, the best Formula 1 driver in the world, Lewis Hamilton, he's black. I could just go on and on and on, man, you know. The point is that black people, the fastest man in the world, Usain Bolt, is also black, you know. They dominate athletics, you know, for different reasons. And, you know, there's actually... why do you think that a lot of black people, or rather, why do you think that so many athletes, for example, in the NBA or the NFL are black? It's because a lot of them grow up in impoverished areas and very poor communities, you know, and their parents have to struggle so much to put food on the table, you know, and some of them grow up in gang infested areas, you know. They can very easily turn to a life of crime and drugs, you know, trafficking, but they get the opportunity to play sports, and that completely changes their lives around, you know, because it's a lot easier for a white person to play professional sport than a black person, because the white person will have privilege. They will have many more opportunities to go pro, whereas somebody from a black community is going to have to really struggle really hard to get there, you know. Allen Iverson is a good example. Muggsy Bogues, Damian Lillard, you know. These players came from nothing and they grew into something huge in the NBA, you know, because these are the opportunities that they will have in life, you know. They come from these areas where you are given very few opportunities in life. So playing a sport like basketball or football is what puts you on the table and gives you a future. That's why there are so many black athletes across these sports, you know. Hockey is different. Hockey is largely dominated by whites, and I don't really know why, but that's just semantics, I guess. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna wrap this up here because my battery is running low and I've been recording for over 20 minutes now, so I'm gonna get going. Hopefully you guys support the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, if I have any black viewers, subscribers, you know, African Americans, you know, I stand up for you, okay? Just know that I'm on your side, okay? I do come from black ancestry, you know, that you can actually kind of see that in a few of my physical attributes, like my hair. If I let my hair grow out, it literally becomes an afro, same as my uncle, who is black, by the way. So I mean, that's just how it is, man. You know, I kind of identify with that community a lot. When I was in high school, I had a lot of black friends. I even had a little bit of a gangster phase. I used to listen to a lot of rap and hip-hop, you know. The rapper Plies actually recorded a song. I'm going to leave a link to the music video here. It's called 100 Years, that shows how predominantly racist, you know, the United States the juridical system is, you know, with law, and how they sentence black people, you know, much more harshly than white people. Go watch it. It's very explicit. A lot of, you know, N-word. The N-word is said a lot, but it's a very good song, you know. It's going to give you a bit more perspective. But that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, something very serious. The next one won't be so bad. It's gonna go back to the regular format of me being happy and whatnot. So hopefully this video reaches the audience that I intended it to. I'm sorry if I butchered any details. I tried to read directly from the source here. And yeah, if you guys happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell too so you can know exactly what time I upload. And that's it, guys. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Did I say, you know, like this video, notification bell to notify when I get, I don't know, man, I'm just confused. But yeah, this is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. I'm sorry, I'm just hungry. Roll the outro screen.